Hey, good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. A wonderful 2023 to you. So I'm here with our usual guest hosts.
Guest host? I think it's co-host.
Co-host.
I think if I was a guest, I wouldn't always be here.
Yeah, see,
I'm here to help you out.
yes, and to give me a hard time, which you do
Sorry.
such a bang-up job of.
Thank you.
And we're also here with Rob Wheeler today. He's usually not on the screen. Last week we got to see him behind the glass. He's going to be with us, but in a minute we're going to talk to him about why he's here
Yes, we
and
are.
why he loves his work. But before we do that, though, we thought we would show the 2019 gala speech called The Dream, where we first laid out this whole idea of what would it look like if Vision 30 was to actually happen, if we could get every child with a thriving family supported by a faithful community, if we could really make foster care obsolete. So let's watch that. I think it's a good way to start a new year, and then we're going to come back and visit with our old buddy, the Rob Meister. Do you know what the two saddest words that have ever been spoken? The two saddest words ever spoken. Be realistic. Yeah, I hear that a lot. I've heard that a lot growing up as well. When I was 19 years old, the fall of my sophomore year, my roommate and I started a ministry called Mountain Outreach. Was our dream to build homes for the poor in Eastern Kentucky. We had no resources. We didn't know anything about construction, let alone building a house. And we didn't know how to raise money. My very first fundraising event was an idea that I had.
I wanted to have something that we could go door to door to sell, very much like the Girl Scouts have cookies. So everybody would associate this product with Mountain Outreach. So I decided that product would be light bulbs. Brilliant idea, right? So I calculated, I know David Marshall's nervous about that. I calculated how much we needed and then kind of backtracked to how many light bulbs we would have to sell. So I ordered them and misunderstood what a case of light bulbs meant. A semi truck delivered all the light bulbs that we had to go door to door to sell. A tractor trailer full of light bulbs. So fortunately, some of the leadership at the college where I was at saw that this was an impossible task and talked to the company into taking back those light bulbs. And they said to me, Robert, you've got a beautiful dream, but sometimes you have some really bad ideas. So what is the difference between ideas and dreams? It might be size. You know, when I share a really big idea, people often say, oh, you're just dreaming, right? As if dreams or ideas get so large that they kind of move into a separate category. But no, right? We can have ginormous ideas and pretty small dreams. Growing up in poverty, my dream was to live in a new double-wide trailer in a trailer park with paved roads. That was the size and the scope of my dreams. Could it be content? You know, we can have good ideas and we can have bad ideas, but dreams are reserved for only righteous goals, right? Well, sadly, no. Right? Hitler's dream of a master race turned into a living nightmare for millions. So it's not content. Some believe the difference between ideas and dreams is found in the difference between costs and benefits. Now, that might work well for ideas, but dreams don't work that way. Right? We can't calculate dreams using a cost-benefit analysis. True dreams always have a tremendous cost that most aren't willing to pay, especially if you never see the dividends. So just what then is the difference between ideas and dreams? Well, ideas are etched in our minds with their limited capacity, but dreams and visions are carved in our hearts where there are no such limitations. Ideas are usually abandoned when costs get too high. Yet we will pursue our dreams despite the cost because we're compelled by deep convictions. And because they spring from our souls and not our brains, dreams move us, right? They drive us through any obstacle and pass all boundaries, real or imagined. Dreams fuel our passions to change current realities into better futures, even if we have to die trying. So let me share our dream. So 3 years ago, my staff had an idea to do something to support Child Abuse Awareness Month. And it passed the cost to benefit ratio. And so they planted 670 blue pinwheels on a grassy knoll right across the street from our Windhurst offices, one pinwheel for every case in Lynchburg. The following year, they planted 1,247 pinwheels. Folks, this year, the number is 1,857. 1,857. So reports of child maltreatment has basically tripled here in the last 3 years. Friends, it has reached a crisis. And it's the same scenario throughout South Central Virginia. And that's just a sad reality. So what would a better future look like that perhaps we could dream of? We'd love to see the day when no child ever needed foster care, but since we can't control human nature, we've decided to state it like this. Because there are some things that we can do to diminish the need. We're convinced that if enough attention is given to prevention and early intervention, we can dramatically reduce these numbers. See, we know the causes of child abuse. It's not a mystery. Poverty, substance abuse, dysfunction, family breakdown. We even know the neighborhoods where most of this happens. So focusing on the causes and on the places would just be smart strategy. Now, for those kids that we can't catch with our targeted efforts, we can divert them away from foster care system into what we believe to be a distinctly better structure of care. The cure for child abuse is simple. Children who live in or at least are connected with a thriving family are safer, they're healthier, and they have better life outcomes. Friends, strengthening families makes children safer. Now, I didn't say it was easy, but I did say it was simple. So the best way to help families thrive is to ensure that they're supported by a faithful community. And I believe with all of my heart, because I experienced this personally as a child, that the very best community of support is the local church. Now, we'll never do away with foster care, nor should we. The state has a role to play that only they can. But we can, however, build a private system that does the work that only a private system can. For this alternative system to work, it must be free from politics, free from burdensome bureaucracy, and free from the corrupting influence of government money. The well-being of children demands that we act only in their best welfare, free of any conflicting interests. Patrick Henry Family Services is uniquely positioned to create this other system. Not taking public funds allows us to be an independent player in the child welfare space. Without heavily regulated government dollars, we aren't forced to bend and twist our programs around the ever-changing requirements. We're free to chase after the mission instead of after the money. We're able to make decisions that truly serve the needs of desperate families instead of worrying about the next contract. Now, this isn't just outside the box thinking, it's making the box unnecessary. Of course, Patrick Henry Family Services could never be big enough to fulfill a dream of this magnitude alone. A dream this size requires a community of the willing. Individuals, families, organizations, and yes, government. Each committed to ending child abuse, not just treating the victims and punishing the perpetrators. It's not a program, it's not an organization, and it's not a law, although these things might be required. We're talking about building a movement where everyone knows their part in this audacious dream and are empowered to fulfill it. Now, no dream is worthwhile unless it is shared. Roanoke and Danville are dealing with the opioid crisis, and it would be a sin not to bring the dream to those cities if it were in our power. And we cannot ignore the rural areas. Vulnerable children and distressed families live there too. They're experiencing the same crisis, yet without the resources and services found in the metropolitan areas. So it is imperative that the dream go to where the need is the greatest. But we will need resources. You knew I was going to get to that eventually, right? But the resources I speak of are not money, although it will take a lot of it. The primary resource for making this dream come true is people. people just like you. Turns out, families in crisis whose children end up abused and neglected in the foster care system are isolated without a healthy relationship. So the dream can only be accomplished if everyone gets personally involved in some form or fashion. You know, writing a check is helpful and it is appreciated, but your presence is vital in making the dream come true. You know, I was born in the foster care system. My 16-year-old mom was a ward of the state of Tennessee, living in an unwed mother's home when I was born. Deep poverty and unspeakable abuse robbed her of a decent and normal life. Every horrible thing that happened to her, she passed down to me. I was physically abused, neglected, sexually abused, and exploited. Substance abuse, domestic violence, and crime was our way of life. The real damage, however, went deeper than any physical pain or lack of want that I experienced. Her serial rejection of me left a scar on my soul that every orphan carries. You know, long ago I cried out in the spirit of adoption, Abba, Father, and He adopted me into His spiritual family. Yet I still sometimes find myself struggling with an orphan persona, feeling hurt, angry, depressed, and lonely. Voices whisper, they don't really love you, they're going to leave you too. Now, my status as a recovering orphan explains why I've given so much attention to building up the counseling services that we offer. You know, we're foolish to think that we can rescue children from abuse and not heal the adults who care for them. Listen, folks, everything bad that happened to me, every single thing was entirely preventable. All the terrible events in my mother's tragic life was escapable. So why weren't they? The truth is that the state can only act after abuse has occurred, after the damage is done, and only if they know about it. Now, I'm thankful that they have the power and the resources and the responsibility to intervene in private lives of families in crisis. But friends, we, private citizens, working together, have more power, more resources, and more responsibility than they do. So we must find ways to intervene before the state has to, before a seminal event occurs when a child is forever traumatized and a family broken beyond repair. And if the state has to act, then we should be there ready to care for those precious kids and their dear families without prejudice and without reservation. Thank you. Now, the evidence is clear about what happens if we don't. Abused children who enter the foster care system are destined for our prisons, homeless shelters, mental health facilities, and in the hands of drug dealers and sex traffickers. They are more likely than not to spend the rest of their life dependent on one government system or another. So folks, we can either pay it now or we will pay for it later. The two saddest words ever spoken, be realistic. Folks, we can't afford to be realistic. So come, dream the dream with us, and together, let's make child abuse history. Thank you.
Wow, hard to believe that was coming on 4 years ago, and that was the first time that we told the public that we're going to do this Vision 30 thing, and then 2 years later we launched it, and now we're 2 years in, so we have 8 years left to make this happen. Now, we could talk a lot about that night because we remember it well, all three of us do, but Rob, let's talk a little bit about your experience having that being the first time that you really heard the dream rolled out and how that impacted you.
Yeah, I guess the main thing for me that night was, I had been working here about 3 months at that point, and that was the first time I think that everything kind of clicked together into a broader vision, right? It wasn't just, hey, we are in the human social services space. We provide mental health counseling. We've got this cool camp. These are the things that we do, right? The programs. It was, oh, this is why we do those things. And I had my own why for why I came and started working here, but that was cool for me to be able to touch on this is why Patrick Henry does these things.
So to talk about the why you came to work here and how that why is developed over time.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this a lot the last 24 hours or so, and I think that a person's why evolves over time. And what you think your why is at the beginning is generally very compelling, right? And for me, that initial why was I wanted to kind of shift more into doing something that was more meaningful than, I came from being the part owner in a business that I had. And that was cool. But, we printed pictures and we worked with small businesses and we helped them kind of, get their marketing together. But this was an opportunity to tell the stories of people, which was always something I've been passionate about. I love telling stories. And so this was an easy why. But over time, that why has shifted into being more urgent, because we can't just tell the stories. The stories still need to be told, but now they need to be told for a more focused purpose. And it's been cool for me over the last 4 years here almost to see this organization's focus narrowed, while at the same time the impact growing broader.
Okay, so I'm one of those people who hears about this. I listen to the speech and I do not understand why everybody is not flocking to us to say, I want to be part of this, right? I mean, it's a liability of my personality to not be able to understand why everybody doesn't see things the way I do, and I understand that. But it's such a compelling vision in this idea that we can change those statistics of the future that you mentioned in the speech yesterday. And so tell me, Rob, we're going to tie this together because as a director of marketing, it's your job to get all those people to hear about this and compel them to come to us, and they're not flocking. Like I think they should. So what's your strategy and what's your focus as a director of marketing? We'll start there with what's your vision for how that's going to bring all the people, because it's not just going to be the money, it's going to be the energy, the passion. People who love this space need to be here. They need to hear about it and get connected so we can make this happen together.
So it's a perfect time of year to talk about this, right? Here we are. We just had the new year. Everybody is focused on, all right, new year, new me. I'm going to do these things to make myself better. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And then February 1st comes. And everybody looks at each other or doesn't look at each other, right? And the gym goes from being full for the first 2-3 weeks of January to
back to the way it was in November.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And my thought process here is that people are just people. People continue to do the same things over and over and over again. And you look at what moves our culture, right? We had a super weird last couple of years. But one of the things that kind of disrupted me a little bit was how much the general public flocked to when Taylor Swift put out that new album, right? And you look at what motivated those people to actually make a movement of, okay, I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to watch this. And then she dropped that she's going to have this new tour, right? And there's this super exclusive way to get tickets and all that. people want the things that other people don't have. People like exclusivity. And anytime that they can be a part of that, I mean, look at TikTok, right? Why is TikTok the way it is?
That's a very good question.
Yes.
If you spend any time on TikTok, why is it the way it is? Very good question.
And I've tended to kind of like insulate myself from it and just kind of like pay attention to the things that go viral. And it's the same with Instagram and Facebook, right? People are, for whatever reason, the viral in the moment, they'll latch onto it. Everybody thinks they're a comedian. Everybody thinks that, they could be the next viral, but you're not going to. The reality is that we all put on our socks one sock at a time, right? It doesn't matter who we are. So as I look at this problem, I think it's easy to get caught up into the hype of, we got to do this. This is desperate. This is urgent. This is urgent. This is urgent. Well, not everything can be urgent, because if everything's urgent, right, nothing is. And so for me, I think the part of what we are about here is the meaningful relationship part. And I think there's this tendency to want to do that flash in the pan viral path of, hey, we got everybody talking about this right now. But how many of those things have lasted?
Yeah.
How many of those have borne out and borne fruit at a long period of time? Taylor Swift's going to be gone in 10 years, more than likely, right? There's going to be somebody else, right? And that's no knock on her. It's just that's how the music industry works, right? But if we want to still be here in 10 years and we want to still be screaming from the rooftops that, hey, this child neglect thing is real. And this is something that, Mr. Day recently, he had that graphic of Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, 6 of them. That's the current foster care population, right? And if we want to still be in a place where we're leading this charge, but Lord willing, 10 years from now, that's maybe 2 stadiums instead of 6, I think focusing on the thing that takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort and a little bit more quality, building those meaningful relationships, right? Because it's easy. I can pump out video content and get people hyped about something. We had that Baby Ali video. That story is just so compelling. And it's been easy for our social media audience to click on that. Again, it was our highest performing in terms of views and shares and engagement, right? But what does all of that actually amount to?
All right.
Right?
So let me ask you a follow-up question on that, Rob. Right. So social media is a new phenomenon in history, and all the great movements of history did it without social media. Right. So social media is not required for this to happen. It is how we communicate today. But if you think about, the civil rights movement or any of those kind of things, they're all about changing a system. But the system wouldn't change without this movement, right? This mass buy-in of everybody, not just the power brokers, but everybody wanting this to happen and doing their part. But how do you have a movement without some kind of a marketing? There's got to be a message that people can gravitate towards, right? Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Director of Marketing, what's your dream for marketing? Not just for Patrick Henry, the organization, but marketing for this movement that we're calling Vision 30.
So you mentioned Martin Luther King Jr., and that one has always been one that I look at and I'm like, okay, he did it right. He understood grassroots. He understood that it wasn't his job to go build the relationship in each of those cities, right? That wasn't his job. His job was to build the relationships with the people that were close to him. Their job was to build their relationships, and then so on and so forth. The other one that did it really well was Billy Graham, right? Every time that Billy Graham Crusade went, I was a little kid when he came to Philadelphia, right? And I remember for months beforehand, there was this lead up. My parents were in a Billy Graham Bible study, right? And we had people from our neighborhood that never went to church with us, never went to our church, but they came to the Billy Graham Crusade with us. And why was that? Well, it was because my parents were focused on building relationship with them during that for a specific event, right? And then as we went through that process and then there was the follow-up afterwards, right? And all of that was event-based, right? Martin Luther King did the same thing. He would go and he would show up in a town and they would do a march, right? Or he'd be, the I Have a Dream speech, right? How did all of those people arrive there? Well, they bust from everywhere because it all kind of stared out. And so social media just gives you another platform for putting something out on, but it doesn't spur movement because it's easy to just sit there and scroll through and, I'm going to like that. Well, then you put your phone down and you've done everything you needed to do. Nothing moved your feet to actually go participate. But the thing that will move your feet is when you watch somebody that you're already influenced by take a step. Because peer pressure is still one of, I think, the biggest influencers.
Well said.
So we got about 1 minute left. I want you, with all of your marketing energy, to talk to the people and appeal for the leaders who are not Patrick Henry staff, who really care about this space, to be those influencers that take the next step and build those relationships. And that is how we're going to end out here.
So for me, I think what everybody should focus on is taking a pause. And maybe you're not called for doing something in the foster child space. Maybe you're not called to do something in the social welfare space. But you are called to be the best you for the relationships that are immediately around you. And when I tuck my kids in at night and I look at my wife, on a regular basis, I think about how blessed I am that we have that. I am not a perfect parent. I have yelled at my kids. I have been mad at things. But if on a regular basis, when you just take the time to just take stock, you say, okay, I want to make this one step better. I'm going to get 1% better tomorrow from today. I think that's where you start. And then you find people around you that are smarter than you, that are doing things better than you are, and then you find a way to invest in them because that person will invest in you. That's the key. That's the key. 1% a day.
That's a good answer. You must have a good supervisor here, Patrick.
I believe that that's the key to all things successful about Rob. That's what I would say. Don't know who it is, but we need to find that person and say, you are awesome.
Hey, guys, thanks for joining us today on Community Connection and hearing about our really cool, amazing dream. Thank you, Rob, for doing what you do to make that word get out. And I am a firm believer that together we can make foster care obsolete. We need to.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
See you next week.
Nobody gets to choose their family. If a person is fortunate enough to be born into a healthy family, then life can be much like floating down a smooth, gentle river in the summertime. But an unhealthy family is like a dangerous river, filled with rocks, debris, and fast-moving water. This river swiftly leads to the steep waterfall of adulthood, tragically forming a new river of dysfunction. Even if you aren't born into an unhealthy river, there are many streams that cause a person to get there. But there is only one way to get out, and that is through a meaningful relationship. Across our region, there are many agencies, churches, and families who are devoted to helping children escape from unhealthy rivers. Some feel their role is to wade in and rescue children. They foster, adopt, or provide safe families. Others stand by the river and support the rescuers by providing what they need. Still, others are upstream and stand in the gap to keep children from ending up in the negative situations. At Patrick Henry Family Services, we see ourselves as having an additional role. We are running up and down the shores of the unhealthy river, screaming, "Can't you see the children in the water? You have to do something." Vision 30 is a 10-year initiative. By 2030, we envision a region where all children are safe in their own family, or with caregivers who are supported by a local faith community. So, where do you stand at the river? Are you upstream, keeping families together and strong by standing in the gap? Are you in the river, directly impacting children? Are you on the shore, providing support for the brave folks who have entered the river? Or are you just passing by without noticing? No matter who you are, come down to the river with us. Let us help you find your place. Not only will lives be changed, but you will never be the same.